everybody. I wanted to make a quick little video about auricular therapy and just as an intro and to help explain why I decided to learn auricular therapy and am adding it to my practice. So I have a couple of tools here to show you, including my auricular therapy device, which is called the Point of Select. It's a probe that you use to treat the ear. I also have my model of my ear that I use to explain to people what areas I'll be treating. And there's also this silver probe. And that's basically the tools that I'm using in this practice. So auricular therapy is it's a modality of care, of treatment, that is used to treat the ear, to treat the entire body, including the brain, including all parts of the nervous system, muscles, bones, ligaments, everything from a neurological perspective. So on the ear, there are all these different areas that are associated with different parts of the body. And these areas were mapped out by this amazing French physician in the 1950s named Dr. Paul Nogier. And the Europeans are very keen on auricular therapy, and there are 20,000 something auricular therapists that are all mostly medical doctors in Europe practice this. But here in the United States, as long as you have a license to touch, you are allowed to you can treat this, you can do this. And also some people have ways of working around the licensing and practicing this. But anyways, as a physical therapist, this is well within my scope of care and I can do this modality. So on the ear, there are all these different parts of the ear that are associated with different parts of the body. And so when a person comes in with a certain condition, like chronic pain, like gastrointestinal distress, migraines, fatigue, insomnia, somebody might have pain from cancer, addictions, emotional issues, all kinds of stuff. There are going to be parts of the ear that I can treat. There are hundreds of protocols for different conditions, and also using common sense, using my medical background, I'm able to create my own protocols based on what I know about the body. So generally, there are a few different areas of the ear that are associated with different kinds of conditions. This part of the ear, the helix, and inside this part of the ear, the triangular fossa, and this section here and this section here are associated with muscles and bones and joints and things like that. So inside this triangular fossa, that little indentation up here in your ear, you will find the points for the hips, the legs, the feet, and the ankles. Along this portion, this ridge, that's the sacral spine. The lumbar spine starts about here and it goes to about here. And you can find many points along that to treat. The thoracic spine goes to about here, and the cervical spine comes to about here. So there's lots and lots of points that you can treat along here for anyone with back pain. The arms are along this portion. So it starts with the shoulder and goes up to the elbow and the wrist and the fingers. And the rib cage is treated in this big area, and there's a point in there for the heart. In the inside of the ear here, this is where most of the organs are found. So small intestine, large intestine are up here, kidneys and stomach are over here, and then you find liver and spleen and pancreas, as well as the emotional heart and the lungs in this portion. Where the hole is, you can't see it on this model, but around the ridge of the hole, you'll find places for some of the cranial nerves, including the vagus nerve, which is a very common point that I treat for people. Along the earlobe, you'll find most of the points for the brain itself. And there are a couple of fantastic points to treat. There's the master sensorial point, which helps with any kind of symptoms that a person is having that they aren't finding easy exploration or explanation for, like if there's a throbbing and aching and itchy sensation that doesn't have another medical reason for it, then you can treat that point and a lot of those symptoms will go away. There is other points here that help with when you're overthinking and your brain is spinning, there's a master cerebral point that I find very useful to treat on myself. And there's another point over here called the anxiety point that is another one of my favorites. And there are other emotional areas. There's a grief point, there's aggression, anxiety, or like I said, anxiety, and other emotional points, frustration that you can find in this region of the ear. Along the edge of this tragus, this is called the tragus, and in the groove here, you'll find a lot of the points for glands. So the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, thalamus, and the endocrine system can be treated in here, as well as the adrenal glands. In this portion of the ear, closer to the side of your face, there are many points for other emotional conditions like depression, addiction, and there's even a really fantastic point in here called the interferon point, that if your immune system is run down, that would be an important point to treat because it kicks off the immune system. I treated it myself when I had to fly this past weekend as a proactive measure against catching anything on the plane. And there are also some other organs up here like kidney and bladder and the external genitals that you can treat. So the front of the ear is mostly sensory points, and the back of the ear is where you can find mostly motor points. So having to do with the muscles. And this is, like I said, mostly sensation. But you'll find some sensory points on the back and some motor points on the front as well. So anyways, once a person comes in and they have told me their history and I have some ideas of some points, then I would start an evaluation. Typically what that involves is taking both my point of select device, which is a little electronic device that measures the electrical frequency or the electrical resistance of the skin and the different areas of the ear associated with the different organs and joints and things, and also a plain metal probe. And so I would look at the ear, look at the shape of the ear and the color of the ear and compare them. And I would ask if there's any tenderness in certain parts of the ear. I would be focused at first on the parts of the ear that are associated with the person's complaints. And then once I identified a few areas, then I would turn on my point of select. I have the person hold on to the grounding rod. And then I would begin to look around the ear with my point of select. So my point of select can identify where there's an active point that needs treatment, and it can also treat. So it's an evaluation and treatment device. There are a number of different frequencies that I use depending on the area that I'm on in the ear, the symptoms that the person is showing, and the severity of the condition, how long they've had it and how severe it is. So just to give you an example, if I am looking in my probe, I would have my probe in the person's ear and I would be testing these different areas and looking for lights to show up on my point of select. And I'm going to show you on me what that looks like. So I would push this is a kind of a spring here. It's not showing any points on my fingers, but I'm going to put it in my ear and see if I can show you a point or two. Okay, so I found one. It's in the area somewhat around my vagus nerve. And it's showing a green light on my point of select device. If you can see, the light in the middle is lit up. And on my box here, it says that I need to tonify this point. The green light means tonify, which means that this point is deficient in energy and needs energy. So I just push the red button on the top of my point of select wand, and it will treat for about 8 seconds. And I'm counting in my head 8 seconds, and then I come off, and that point is done. You can also change the frequency. I'm going to change the frequency from the organ frequency to a musculoskeletal frequency. And I'm going to look and see if I can find some musculoskeletal point that needs to be treated. Now, obviously on a person, I'm much more exacting, but I'm doing this on myself and kind of guessing. Okay, I found a sedate point. So there's a little S on my box, and my point of select is glowing orange. That means at this point, which is probably in the middle of my, uh, maybe around my elbow, it needs to be sedated. It's got too much energy and it needs to be calmed down. So I'm going to push on that for 30 seconds, treating it with the red button. And when it's complete, it'll be all done. So when I treat my right ear, I am treating the left part of my brain, left hemisphere, and my right shoulder. So it's right ear, right shoulder, right part of the right side of the body, left ear, left shoulder, arm, foot, etc. So this is about 30 seconds. This is completely painless. You might feel a little sense of prickling underneath the point of the device when you put it on the ear. Certain parts of the ear are a little bit more sensitive. When I was treating my vagus nerve, that is a recurrent problem for me. And it's kind of tender. And I would have known that also when I was probing around with my metal probe. So that's how a couple of points are treated. And when you know what the points are that a person, when you suspect that there are points related to a certain condition, then you just treat each point. And there are a few points that we treat on everyone, including a point here in the middle of the ear. That's called point 0, which is a vitality point. There's Shenmen up here. You can actually see it on my little ear. That is called the spirit gate. That is a joy point. It gives the person a feeling of openness, connects them to spirit. And then there's also a point on the back here of the antitragus that I would treat the thalamus point. It's a great point to kind of coordinate the hemispheres, and also it's the overall pain point that's useful to treat. So after a session, usually people feel very relaxed when they're receiving the auriculotherapy. It's not uncommon for people to fall asleep. I had one lady tell me that she felt like I had given her an edible. She was that relaxed. And people have a great experience. Some people after a session will have a flare up of their symptoms. That's in about 10% of people, where they have what's called a healing reaction or healing crisis after a session. I tend to be that way a little bit when I get powerful treatments. Tend to have a slight worsening of my symptoms, and that of course freaks you out. And then that usually subsides after a day or two, and then I feel much, much better. And that's happened to other clients that I've had. And usually one thing that's very common for people to say is that they feel very relaxed for days after a treatment, and they sleep really well because their nervous system is finally calming down and everything's starting to work properly again. So when do I use auriculotherapy in my practice? Well, I also do other forms of therapy. I do craniosacral, I do neurological work, fascial work, I do hypnotherapy, I do energy work. So I am finding that auriculotherapy is a really helpful adjunct. I don't need to do a whole session of auriculotherapy. I can use it as a fill in the blank. So if I'm not getting very far with another modality, then I can do auricular on top of the modality that I was already doing and get a boost in the efficacy of my treatment. I use it after a person has a session of hypnotherapy because it helps the body to integrate the results of the hypnotherapy. So I'm using it when people come in with certain medical conditions that I want to help support them with, that I don't have other tools for. Like I don't really have a tool to help people with heart disease. I can support their physical body, but auriculotherapy, I can actually find the heart points and give them support. Auriculotherapy has been found to be very safe. It's very similar to acupuncture in its efficacy and safety. There are really no contraindications other than you wouldn't use it when someone is pregnant, because there are points in the ear that can trigger labor, and you want to avoid those points. You don't use it when people have metal in their ears, so that people have to take their earrings out, or a pacemaker because you don't want to give someone a heart attack. And you don't use the device over an open wound, which is sort of self-explanatory. So other than that, there aren't really major complications to using it. And I'm finding it's really helpful for people, and I'm finding it's really helpful for myself. So anyways, if you have questions about auricular therapy and you'd like to know more, please reach out in the comments, or you can email me. My email is jamie@denverpainandperformance.com. I am running a special on auricular therapy for the month of August, just to help people become exposed to it, because it's a new modality, and it's unfamiliar to people. So if you have any questions, please reach out and ask, and I will be responding to those as quickly as I can. And so I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching.